welcome to the Upshot, a podcast for dads who try. For dads who are thinking about their legacy and don't want to miss out on all that fatherhood has to offer. I'm Kyle. I'll be joined by my good friend Shane, and we're excited to jump into today's conversation.
So Kyle, what's your dad moment from this past month?
Dad moment from the past month. So you can help me process through this because I'm still processing it. So Maggie is the almost 4-year-old.
Okay.
She is starting soccer at the Y.
That's a fun time.
So my expectations were pretty low going in,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just going to be a bunch of kids chasing the ball around. And this was just a practice day. So come meet your team, come meet your coach, get your jersey, practice for 45 minutes, in and out. Everybody has fun. Starts at 9 a.m.
Whew.
So we got to get the whole family up because we're all going. It's a family affair.
Yeah.
So we show up. Maggie and Lucy are so Lucy's there. First of all, she's more excited than anybody to be there. She wants to be in the middle of everything.
And how old's Lucy?
The 2-year-old.
Okay.
Yep. And so she's having fun. Maggie, on the other hand, Jess and the girls were out late the night before, way past bedtime.
Yeah.
So she's a little groggy. She's not the morning person that her mom is. And so...
Is this your kind way as a husband to saying she was really grouchy?
She was grouchy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, I'll say it.
She was excited for a little bit, and then it quickly turned into... I'm not about this at all. One other kid shows up. He's super fired up. He's shooting goals and like they're playing with his dad, and he's playing on the goal. And Maggie just determines like that kid's not nice to me. He did nothing, but he's not nice to me. So she just starts losing her mind, like just waterworks. Tears are everywhere. She's screaming. She doesn't want to play with these other kids. They're mean. They're not her friends. And then runs down this little hill, scrapes her knee on a stick. There's a little bit of blood, and now it's she's gone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even 2 minutes into the soccer practice. And so we spent the entire hour with her literally like 100 yards away from the rest of the soccer team, crying and screaming.
Fantastic.
And we would take turns of like sitting down with her, trying to get her to calm down, trying to talk to her about like coming to at least like introduce herself to her team and participate. Yeah. And it didn't work. So we were threatening like no tablet time. We were friends with people. We were trying to remind her of our values. This is fun. She's just like inconsolable, just losing her mind. Her face is all flushed and splotchy and snot and tears everywhere. And so
is this Jessica or Maggie?
Yeah, that was what I felt like doing. So the dad moment is like, I was at a loss. Like, okay, here's my child. I want her to play. We've been practicing all week to be on her soccer team. The other thing was I was just pissed off about like there was no coach for our team. So like then there's just parents who are just a free for all of like
is this the why?
Doing doing drills. And I'm like, these are 3-year-olds. Why don't we just like learn each other's names and sing a song, or I don't know. Like,
sounds like you got coaching credentials.
I was, well, anyways, so I felt pretty like a dad fail. Like, okay, my kid is not participating. Did I push her? What are we going to do next time? All this stuff. So, we all went home feeling pretty defeated that day, except for Lucy. She was great, but everybody else was defeated. So, so I don't know. That's my dad moment. That's sticking with me. We'll try to redeem it in 2 weeks at the next game. Yeah. And we'll go from there.
It's always a tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great opportunity to talk to your kids about. But one thing I've learned from being a father of 6 kids, the best thing you can do to help a kid calm down is to tell your kid calm down. Works every time.
I don't believe that.
No, I think it works 0% of the time.
Yeah. So, I thought about like the candy, tablets, all the incentives, and
you didn't count, did you?
No, I didn't count.
Good.
No, I didn't do any of the counting or threatening. I tried not to threaten, but it was just like wrestling with the feelings of being embarrassed
Sure.
in front of other parents,
Yeah.
but also wanting to be there for her.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah.
That was a weird moment.
Yeah.
So
What's a good one?
what about you? Dad moment.
So one thing I love to do is go backpacking. And
Yep.
I'm part of a father-son group, and we create these moments with our boys where you can call it almost like a rites of passage. And so there were 8 dads and 6 boys, and we went on a backpacking trip for these boys who are kind of in that 16 age range. And the whole purpose of this group is to kind of like help our boys know where they are on this journey to manhood, and let them know that on this journey they've got a group of dads that are there for them. And we want to show them what it looks like to live well as men. And so these boys get a front row seat to seeing us as we go on these adventures together. And so we went on a backpacking trip to Arkansas. And it was fun watching these boys kind of persevere, help one another. My son went back over a river once to help a boy carry his bag across, and these boys would cross some of these creeks ahead of us and try to throw rocks back to create a path for us older dads to walk over without getting our feet wet. So watching these boys kind of take care of others, prioritize the needs of others was pretty neat. And so I wanted to, like on this trip, I was thinking, hey, I want to be a good example to my boys, show these boys what it looks like to love other men well. And so there was this one moment where we had to cross a pretty deep river. It was flowing pretty well, and it was cold, so it was like 35 degrees outside. This river was between like our thighs and our waist, for an average man, which means it was up to my eyeballs. But it was really deep, the water. And so being a good friend that I am, I like to find a vantage point where I can video other dads crossing these rivers, because I was kind of hoping that one of them would fall.
Yeah.
And I'd get the whole thing on video. And so a good friend of mine, James, he was blazing his way across this first kind of really deep, flowing fast river. My boys are right behind him. And James has 2 trekking poles to help him keep his balance. And he gives one to my son, because my son didn't have any trekking poles, and he was right behind him to kind of help my son, navigate the slippery rocks, the water that's flowing really fast. And like right after James gives one of my sons a trekking pole, James falls flat on his face, like he's up like the water. And I'm being the good friend that I am, right? The first thing that I say to him, and I catch it all on video, is like, James, you're carrying my tent. Not how are you? Are you okay? I care more about the fact that he's carrying my tent and is it wet. And as I say this to James, he turns around and looks at me, because I'm standing on a rock videoing him, and gives me that look like, did you really just say, how's my tent? And he turns back and falls again. And so I caught this whole thing on tape, but just realizing I probably wasn't a great example to my boys, not necessarily caring about my friend, caring more about my tent, and laughing at him the whole time. He was.
And your son has a front row seat to this.
Oh, 100%.
Just right there.
Yeah. I mean, and this guy just gave one of my sons his trekking pole, said he wouldn't fall. And I'm just laughing the whole time. So yeah, that was my dad moment. But it was a wonderful trip watching these boys persevere. And I think as dads, it's important to have a few men in your life that can laugh at themselves, and can laugh at you at the same time, and you can laugh together.
Yeah. So did James laugh about it later?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. He laughed at himself. He also laughed at me, and of course his dads gave me a hard time for my first tent comment, and caring more about tent than I did my friend James.
Yeah.
It was good.
Well, that sounds like a fun trip, though.
It was a lot of fun. I still hurt from it.
Right.
Yeah, all over.
35 degrees crossing a river.
Yeah, it was cold. It got down to like 24 degrees at night. We had ice in the tents you'd wake up to. It was wonderful. Does it sound like fun?
A version of fun.
Yeah. It was
For
a good
sick
time.
people, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Arkansas.
Arkansas. I didn't know Arkansas could be so pretty. It's gorgeous.
I've been to there's some cool places there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went to a place called Eagle Rock Loop, if you're ever interested in
Okay.
being really cold, really wet, and watching men fall in rivers.
I'll go in the summertime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. So what's our topic for today?
So today, let's talk about the tension that dads may feel around being a father and career.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we have some questions around that, but that's, I think as fathers, that's frequently a topic that comes up. How do we invest in our families while also investing in a career or in our work or our job?
Yeah.
And at times that can feel like they maybe compete with each other, and so there's tension around it. So,
Sure.
want to wrestle through some questions related to that.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay.
You want to jump right into the questions?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So, Shane, have you ever felt tension between your roles as father and provider? Whether that's been like internally, externally?
Yeah. Never.
Never. Easy answer.
That's right. No, gosh. You know, I think every dad's situation is different. But I'm pretty sure every dad wrestles with this question, or the tension of what does it look like for me to be home and present with my wife and my kids, and what does it mean for me to provide? And every time I open my budget app and everything's in red, I forget what the color green looks like in my budget app right now. It's crazy. Paying for 6 teenagers. It's crazy. It's so
All
expensive.
6 are teenagers now?
Well, no, did I say 6 teenagers? No, I have 5 teenagers. Actually, one is 20. So I only have 4 teenagers now.
Okay.
One above teenage years, one below teenage years. It's crazy.
Okay.
But one of my favorite teenage quotes, raising teens is like hearing there's nothing to eat right after you spent your life savings at the grocery store, which happens continuously. But going back to the question, I think it's, the question I like to ask myself is, what does it mean to provide? And it's not just paying the bills.
Yeah.
Sometimes paying the bills is the easiest way to provide.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it look like to provide for my wife and my kids emotionally, spiritually, mentally? What does that look like with my presence? So the tension between being a provider and being home, I think you provide in a variety of ways that don't just speak to the financial challenges that we might feel, or the tension that we have being a provider. The other thing is, I was backpacking and I was trying to think of what it's like, because I don't think it's tension that you can solve. This being a provider versus being at home or being present with my kids and my wife. But it's like, when you put up a tent, the tent stays up because of tension, right? There's like a rope, or the rope that's in the tent poles. And if one side is pulling too hard, or one side isn't pulling at all, the tent's not going to stand up. So I think there's like a healthy balance of tension that you have to feel when you ask the question, what does it look like for me to be a provider? But yet, what does it look like for me to be present with my kids and my wife? And if that tension isn't right, something's off.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a tension to solve.
Not a tension to solve, tension to pay attention to?
Yeah, tension to manage.
To manage?
I think is something we like to say.
Okay.
Yeah. How do you feel about the question?
Yeah, as I think about it, I mean, that could be a helpful way of challenging me of this tension isn't something to mitigate or to resolve, but one to pay attention to and to manage. I think as I've wrestled with this question, I think I swing like I'm more of like in the pendulum swinging stage of feeling like it's all or nothing, one way or the other.
Yeah.
That in order to do one, I have to lose, like win at one, I have to lose at the other. And so that, I think, is a narrative I've got to change. Like it's a false narrative in my head that, and providing to me, like the role of provider, I like what you said, like we have to provide, not just financially, but there are emotional needs at home. There are, spiritual needs. There are even just like, besides money, just upkeep of home and the calendar and the lives we're putting to the commitments we've made as a family. There's a lot there. And I think that's the piece that can quickly overwhelm me. But I think so to answer the question, yes, I feel the tension, but my reaction is to normally try to resolve it by leaning one way or the other. Or slicing my time up in a way that says like, okay, well, in this moment of time, I can relieve the tension because I have, I'm only wearing one role right now. I'm trying to be father. It's Saturday, so I'm a father today. And I don't know if that's the best way to deal with it, but, or if I'm at work, then like I'm wearing I am this guy today. Or in this moment, that's who I am. I have to live fully into that because and maybe that goes back to what you were talking about, like the presence. Like I'm being fully present to this thing that's right in front of me, whether that's my child or that's my job. And that's not always clean, but
Sure.
that's how I try to mitigate or wrestle with that tension is like moment to moment.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a great way to look at it. I think, if I reflect on my own life, what gets prioritized gets put on my calendar.
Yep.
Like my day-to-day activities at work are driven by my calendar.
Yep.
And it may sound silly, but we should calendar our kids. We should calendar our wife. I mean, I don't know how that sounds, but it's true. Like I will have evening time blocks on my calendar that say family time. I will have date night calendared because it's a priority to me, and I'm putting on that hat, whether it's a husband hat or a father hat. Yep. And so I would challenge men to consider, if they wrestle with trying to find a healthy tension or a healthy balance. I don't like using the word balance because balance almost means like you're static. And I think this is constantly changing as you try to figure out, what does it mean for me to provide and what does it mean for me to be present with my kids. But I would challenge dads to consider calendaring their kids and calendaring their wife if they haven't done that yet.
Yeah. I think this is helpful, maybe even for the dad who's listening right now thinks of, and maybe this is an older way of thinking, like my grandfather I'm thinking about, or, you meet these dads where they feel like, okay, being a dad means providing, that those are synonymous. And so I wonder if, for the dads listening, if they feel that, if they don't feel tension around it, what do you say to a dad that feels no tension around being a father and a provider, because those are synonymous? Like being a great father means I provide and I've done my job, and like,
I just want to meet that person.
Yeah. Okay.
What's the secret? You mean they feel no tension?
Yeah. Like, because being a good father means I put food on the table.
Yeah.
I've done my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there are, that's still a real narrative.
Gotcha. So they're not considering the other needs that their wife and kids may have.
Right.
And I would ask them to find provision.
Yeah.
And ask a lot of follow-up questions with a posture of curiosity.
Sure.
Just wondering, like, could providing for your family extend beyond putting food on the table?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think I've said this before. Like, I wonder what my kids will say about me at my memorial. I can't imagine our kids going up to the mic and saying, at least I don't want them just to say this. I want them to say much more than this. It's like, hey, my dad always put food on the table. Is that what you want to be known for?
No.
Or, if that's part of it, you don't want it to stop there. Maybe that's the beginning of a...
I think it's like a good father wants to make sure there is always food on the table.
Yes, but you want to go, past that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I want a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, something far, far more.
My dad was there at my very first soccer practice and created a safe place for me to unwind when things just weren't going the way I expected.
I'm going to remind her of that when she's older. There's video.
But that's like, how do you provide for your daughter in that moment? It's not food on the table.
No.
It's nothing to do with finances.
She just needs to be seen.
Yeah.
Consoled, comforted.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes maybe encouraged to calm down a little bit.
Or encouraged to go make a friend. Like, do something hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, is it easier for, not is it? Do you think it's easier for us to tell our families no, or easier to tell our coworkers, boss no? And why?
I think this question is probably answered differently by different people. I think there are some people that have an easy time saying no to work and saying yes to family, but I think for me, it is far easier to say no to my family and yes to work. We can feel a lot of pressure at work to perform. We have an image to protect sometimes that is very tempting to to make myself look like I'm successful, and it's easier to do at work than it is at home. Your families see the worst of you, so they already. I think there's a world where they already know who we are. They know our baggage and our brokenness, but I can kind of like hide those things more at work, and I can work to keep my image the way I want it to look at work. And culture's not helping us. I mean, culture isn't saying, hey, dads, or hey, working parents, we want to prioritize your role as a parent. No, they just want to get as much out of us as they possibly can. I mean, that's kind of sometimes the message. I'm reading this book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer.
Yep.
And there was one, it stuck with me. It said one famous Senate subcommittee in 1967 was told that by 1985, the average American would work only 22 hours a week for 27 weeks a year. Everybody thought the main problem in the future would be too much leisure. But yet, the average American works nearly 4 more weeks per year than they did in 1979. I mean, we are pressured to work as much as possible, and so I think it's very easy for us to say, at least for me, it is to say yes to work, and at the detriment to my family, which is hard for me to say, but it's reality.
Yeah, I think it's, you challenge me there too, because I think my initial reaction to that question is, it's easier to say no to family than at work because I'm worried about what people are saying or thinking about me if I say no. But that is a protection. That is I'm trying to protect an identity I want to uphold.
Yeah.
A view or a reputation or my brand of sorts, right?
Yeah.
Team play, whether that's being the team player, that's all the unspoken expectations in the work environment. I don't want people talking about me like he's always taking off early or whatever. And, but yeah, like it challenges me to think about like, well, I want my reputation at work to be, I prioritize my family.
Yes.
So I'm able to say no at times. I'm able to carve my calendar out in order to prioritize the fullness of my life, not just what I give to work.
Yeah.
And
it's, if your culture at work is somewhat healthy, in some cases you get recognized for work well done. How often are your teenage boys going to come, or teenage kids going to come up to you and say, Dad, I'd like to celebrate your success as a father this week? Like it's never going to, you're never like dad of the month to your kids, right? You just go home and you're presented with messes and challenges and it's just hard. I mean, last night we had two sick kids. And we don't have enough drivers for all of our kids, 6 kids, 2 parents. Kids have to be everywhere as teenagers. And I had an evening meeting with a group of men that I meet with, and my wife had an evening meeting with a group of women that she meets with. We both do this once a month, and it just so happens to fall on the same evening. And one of our teenage sons had to get to an event for himself, and we were like, okay, how do we make this work? And so I was going to drive all the way home, which is 30 minutes north of here, pick up my son, and then drive 20 minutes south of here to get to my meeting. So it was going to take me a good hour and a half to pick up my son, drop him off, and then go to this guy's place. And so I was like to my son, I'm like, okay, I'll do this for you. You're worth it. Like, this is important. You want to get to this event. I'll drive you there. And so I frantically get all my work done a little bit early, drive home to pick up my son, only to hear him say, I'm not feeling very well and I don't think I'm going to go. and so it was just like, and there was a part of me that was like, you little, but it's like, these are like, it's hard. And not once. And again, do I need my son to verbally acknowledge that I sacrificed time out of my schedule to come home, pick him up?
Yeah.
No. But it would have been nice for my son to acknowledge, hey, Dad, I understand that it was a sacrifice for you to get home in time to drive me to get to that other meeting you had to go to. But like, you'll get those things at work a lot more than you usually will at home from your kids. Yeah. So that's why it's also easier, I think, sometimes to say yes to work and no to family, because at work there's a chance you'll get recognized more for a work well done than at home.
Yeah. Well, what view of there's some good stuff in here, and I want to make sure we get to talk through some of it. What view of work do you desire for your children to have? I've been thinking about that.
Well, how would you answer the question? Bit. You answer it first this time.
Yeah, I want to. Well, I think of it, I'm challenged by it because we've got a children's book at home we've been reading to the kids.
Yeah.
So they don't know what work is. still,
Sure.
right? The 2-year-old, the 4-year-old, they don't really know. They just know daddy goes to work and he leaves and he comes home later.
Yeah.
They have no clue what I do, and that's fine. But we read this book, and it's called The Creator in You. Creator in You. It's by Jordan Rayner, and it's all about like, well, the first part's like creation story. Here's God creating the world in 6 days, but it doesn't stop on day 6. Instead, there now becomes an invitation to man, or to humanity, to join him in creating, to leverage your creativity, to leverage your problem solving, your this beautiful mind and imagination that we have, to join him in working. So whether that is, building stuff, writing, speaking, communicating, dreaming, all of the fun stuff. So the bulk of the book is challenging children to like, hey, leverage your gifts and your thoughts and your mind and your energy to create and to work, and that work is actually, it's sacred, it's holy.
Yeah.
Because God has created you to do this.
Yeah.
And so, there is a big piece of me that wants to raise my little girls to believe and to live in that sacredness of what they do. One day when they are now old enough to work with their hands, whether that's in the yard with me at home or that's for a job to earn money, that like that's important, and that is still good, and that is, there's a sacredness to that. There's a holiness to it, in the sense of like, God created you to do this.
Yeah.
And there's purpose in that. And so we can, I think, quickly like lose our balance or perspective quickly as we as we confuse like sacredness of work with our identity, or with like how we value ourselves and others. But I think there is a way to find a healthy view of work, and to impart that, and to teach that, raise our children with that. And so, all inspired by this little, recently by this children's book.
It sounds like a fantastic book. I just love listening to the fact that you prioritize reading to your kids, especially at such a young age. I mean, there are a few things that I think are more important than a father sitting down, prioritizing them by giving them his presence and reading a book together. That's great. Don't stop.
Cool. Well, thank you.
It's simple. Like, I want my kids to view work as good. Work is good. God created us to work. You were talking about the sacredness of it. I want them to explore the gifts that God's given them, and I want them to grow up to be adults that understand their gifts and get to leverage their gifts. And I think, we're setting our kids to succeed when we develop a strong work ethic in them. But I also want them to know that, just like everything else in the world, anything taken to the extremes is usually not a good thing. So what I mean by that is, work is good, but taken to the extremes of either not working very much or working too much can both be unhealthy places to be. So what does it look like to have a healthy work ethic that is strong, that requires perseverance, that I think one of your values is we do hard things. Yep. Work can be hard, and that's not a bad thing. I think we default to comfort and fun. Totally. But yet we grow as human beings when we're not comfortable, when we have to persevere. Yep. Those moments help shape us and mold us. God's using those moments to help shape us and mold us. And I want my kids to have the perspective of, when work is hard, maybe they stop and ask the question, what is God doing in me when work gets hard? Yeah. Or what is God trying to do in me when work gets hard? And I think it's, as we talk about what does it look like to develop a work ethic in our children, I think it's amazing how our kids can rise to the challenge. What I mean by that is, like, I would encourage dads to give their kids, or to partner with their wives to give their kids responsibilities early on. Mm-hmm. I love how my wife had our kids doing the dishes when they were like 4 years old. Like, they would load the dishwasher. Now, a consequence is we would have to replace our dishes every 2 months. How many dishes were broken? We have bought so many. Every dish in our cupboard is cracked, chipped, scratched. Like, we have nothing that looks brand new in our house. But yet, my kids, because of what my wife has instilled in them, have a strong work ethic, and they know how to load and empty the dishwasher early on. I love coming home and seeing when Lander, our youngest boy, was like 4 years old, I would come into our utility room and there's Lander loading the washing machine, putting his own clothes. And he's too short. Like my wife had to create little like
step stools.
Yeah, so he would get up on it to put his clothes into it. Like I think our kids will rise to the challenge.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we as parents think, oh no, they can't do that. That's too hard, or they can't figure this out. No, they can.
Well, for us, that's cool because we've started that journey, and it literally just looks like, hey, take your dish and your cup from the table to the kitchen.
Yes.
And recently they're not eating dinner very well anyway, so their plate's still very full with food. And the tension is they're excited to do it. Well, one of them's excited to do it. The other one's like, couldn't be bothered. But we're doing this, and the tension that we feel as parents is like, yes, this is good for them, but it is creating more work for us because it frequently gets dropped. And then we have to clean the floor, or they're just throwing it in the sink, and then it's just like food all over the place, or we're having to, we were going to save some of that, whatever. But so it's like we sacrifice a little bit of the dishes that get broken. Yeah. That's okay. That's a cost we're willing to pay for at the expense of or because we're teaching our children how to load the dishwasher.
I think you should look at it as an investment because if you decided food on the ground, broken dishes aren't worth it, so I'm going to do it as a parent. When does that stop? Like, when do you make, and if your kids, if we raise our kids to just rely on us for everything, like it's almost like credit card parenting, right? Mm-hmm. Like later on in life, your kids, they're not just going to learn this one day and surprise, I'm going to help you with the dishes. Like we have to take them on a journey to teach them a strong work ethic in our home, even if it means cracked dishes and food on the ground.
And it has to, and for us, it is conscious decisions to say, okay, we're willing to do this slower. Yeah. We're willing to to allow for mess, or allow for, it's going to create more work for us. Yes. On the other side, but the lesson and the cultivating that work ethic is worth it, and it's valuable.
100%. So. Also, some of the best dad moments are, let's say Maggie takes her plate to the kitchen, she stumbles, plate falls, shatters, food's everywhere. There's a massive mess. It was a total accident. Maggie is looking to her parents and saying, in her mind, even though she might not be thinking these words, what are my parents going to do? And there are very few parental moments that are more influential on your kids than what you do in that moment. And I know sometimes we get this wrong, right? We're going to freak out. We've had a hard day. We weren't ready to be emotionally tested. The patience. And sometimes we snap as parents, and that's going to happen to all of us. And those are also moments that we can teach our kids what it looks like to ask for forgiveness and show them that we aren't perfect parents, but yet at the same time, in those moments when mistakes happen, can we show our kids that we are there for them? And you can trust me when life gets a little bit messy, and I want you to be able to come to me. And those are great moments when kids drop dishes and there's food everywhere, and you have to respond as a parent, as hard as it may be. So let them.
That's good.
Let them drop plates.
Let them drop plates.
Yeah.
Sometimes I take a deep breath after thinking about that because it's frequent.
Seriously, if you want to feel better, just come to my house, open my cupboards, and just count the chipped dishes and cups.
That's fair. Super fair.
Yeah.
Let's do one more.
Okay.
Time. We always seem to feel like there's not enough time. How do we prioritize the most important things? We've kind of talked about this a little bit early on, but we're talking about your calendar. But
so, the way you ask the question, we as dads have to ask a question before that is, what is the most important thing? That's a question that we have to ask of ourselves. And I think we have to it may seem like a simple question to ask, but we need to think about things like, what breaks our heart? What am I passionate about? What kind of human beings do I want my kids to turn into? And then actually come up with these are the important things. These are the non-negotiables. And then how do you make time for those? Yeah. And I think you and I would agree that kids is high on that list, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. And I think.
Well, and there may be a seasonality to some of that. It's a frequent reiterating what is the most important, how do we prioritize?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that can change.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, it's what is so frustrating sometimes is like, as we're trying to like establish our career and kind of like build momentum in the direction we're going, sometimes that also happens when our kids are really young. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we live in a world today where science is revealing so much about brain development. And I think study after study is reinforcing the importance of the first 1,000 days in a child's life. So like 0 to 3, or you could even like extend it to say 0 to 5. Like I read this week that 90% of a child's like core brain structure is developed by the time they're 5, which will like the rest of their life is lived from that. And so when you think about that, it's easier for me to think about what's important. What's important is I want to spend as much time with my children in that early age of life, which is so difficult to do when you're trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with my career? Where am I going? How do I do this well? But I like to think our kids are at that age, they're sponges, and they start as a dry sponge, and they're just going to soak up everything those first 5 years. And what are they soaking up? And then once they're full, there's no room to soak, right? And so it's like I get the opportunity to make sure I'm helping have some influence in what they're soaking up in those first 5 years. It's so important. I don't know if I answered your question, but like, so when I'm thinking about prioritizing time, I pay attention to brain development, children, how important our presence is with them, especially when our kids are really young.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we adopted our daughter, Kaylee. She's amazing. God is using her to teach us so many things about us. She has this incredible joy about her. I love her laughter. But we're also learning that even though she was only in an orphanage for like the first 2 years of her life, we thought like, okay, we're gonna get a lot of time to like love her well, to show her what safety looks like, to show her she can trust her mom and dad. The trauma that came out from just those 2 years in an orphanage is just profound. And trying to like navigate understanding how it has had an impact on her development. Not to say that we can't walk alongside her on the journey that she has in front of her, but it's challenging, and it's just eye-opening as some of these counselors and therapists unpack the impact that her experience in the orphanage had on her. And I just say that to say, hey, Dad, recognize how much of an impact you have on your kids when you're home, especially when they're young.
Yeah. Well, that's good. But there's some dads, like now you're in a season of life where the 5-year window is over.
Yeah.
The sponge is full.
Yeah.
And so, do you still feel like there's not enough time?
Oh, 100%.
And, do you, any like just really practical tips for a dad who's trying to prioritize their time?
Calendar. We talked about that. Calendar your kids, calendar your wife. It sounds silly, but do it. I have to remind myself, like we talked about, like God created us to work. He designed us for work. And, we're followers of Christ. So one of the things we think is like, our Heavenly Father loves us. He's perfect. He made really good decisions. And so God decided that each day should have 24 hours. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I say I need more time, I need to stop and reflect like, no, 24 hours is good. And I think it's a good exercise to like stop and write out where does all your time go. Do like a time assessment, because that can be very convicting.
Yep.
And, I don't want to say, Dad, this is what your time should look like, but I think men should take a personal inventory of where they spend their time, because it is their most precious commodity. I mean, we budget, right? Our finances. Do we take the time to think about how we budget our time?
Yeah.
So I would do a time assessment. I would encourage dads to consider it.
Yeah.
And then hold it up against their priorities and what's important to them. And are they spending time where they need to?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that answering your question?
Sure. Yeah.
How do you answer this question?
The only thing I would add is part of that, we got to know what's most important. We talked on the last episode a little bit about like the whole idea of Upshot and the idea of who do we want to be at the eventual outcome of this fatherhood journey. What do we want that to look like? And I think that is just such an important exercise in determining what's most important and therefore how to spend my time. And
Yeah.
so I would just reflect that, like, if you haven't gone through some sort of exercise to determine your upshot
Yeah.
as a father and as a man, you know, and I think that as you reflect through that, you will navigate or wrestle with a lot of the tension and the concepts we're talking about today regarding career and fatherhood, you know, like, and therefore then be able to help prioritize your time and allocate, okay, the energy that is, you know, I also think that, like, so much of this is less about time too. Like, there's a time component to the time, like you talked about with kids are under 5, there's a time component, the time invested, presence with them. I also think there's an energy component of, like, I can spend time with my children, but, like, there's also an energy that I invest in my children. There's an energy that I invest at work versus a passive. I'm physically present in a space, right? And so thinking through my calendar, what are those things that are giving me energy? What are those things that are just draining? And, you know, that's all part of this reconciliation with, like, what's most important and that prioritization. So I would say just do it with the upshot in mind. Like, who are you trying to become? Who do you feel called to be? Yeah. And does your calendar reflect that? That's so good. So that would be my only 2 cents to add on to what you said.
Yeah.
But,
and I think, you know, you're a dad with younger kids. One question that I think is important, it may sound so simple, but when I'm providing for my children beyond their financial stability, one question I would ask myself is, am I at a spot where I can be silly with my kids, where I can play with my kids? The reason why it's like, I can be physically present, but if I'm incapable of getting on the ground and roughhousing with them or laughing at them at really silly, stupid things, there's something that's off. Yeah. And so that was one of, like, my assessments when I'm walking into my house. I'm about to give my family some time. Yeah. I would ask myself, am I at a place where I can be silly with my kids, laugh with them, and play? Yeah.
Well, for me, I think that's a great gauge. For me, the other piece, I've over the last year, I've realized, like, I've got some anger issues. So Enneagram 9, if anybody follows that, if you follow that, but you're still part of the anger tribe. There's a deep anger within me that nobody ever sees. Like something's wrong one day when you see Kyle really angry, like that, it's bad. And so, but I've realized, like, at home, I'm getting very angry at my children. And it's like, this is not who I want to be. What's the root of this? And the root is usually, like, well, I have another agenda and they're getting in the way of that. Yeah. And therefore, I can spend 2 hours with you at dinner and doing bath and bedtime and reading books. But if I'm angry the whole time because you're just annoying me, then, like, I'm not really present. I'm not finding ways to have fun with you because my mind and the energy that I have is really still invested in problems at work, things I'm trying to accomplish, things I'm looking forward to once I can finish up, once you're finally in bed and I can move on. Like, you are an obstacle in what I'm trying to get to versus, hey, no, I'm fully present with you and we can laugh and have fun and make a mess. And it's okay.
It's good.
You know? So,
I love that you have that level of self-awareness. Well, to recognize that there's at times this anger that you have to kind of, like, okay, you're on a journey to figure that out, to process that. And then I also would like to do a future episode where we try to pull that anger out of you so we can all see it together.
Okay, well, that'll be a fun one. What's a takeaway from today that you're going to leave with?
My takeaway is I need to go find places where 5-year-olds are playing soccer for the first time and watch how parents interact with their kids. I feel like
try the 3-year-old field.
The 3-year-old field. I need to go find the 3-year-old field. So I'm going to hit the Y a couple times this week.
9 a.m. at the Y.
What it was like to parent a 3-year-old learning how to play soccer for the very first time. It sounds so simple, but just listening to you talk, the importance of reading with my kids. So I have 2 that are, I've Lander, my youngest son. I still have a lot of time to read books with him. Yeah. So you're inspiring me to continue to prioritize reading books with Lander.
Cool.
What's your takeaway?
Messes are good. Like the mess that we're going to encounter is a good thing. It's a helpful reminder that, like, it's not about the mess, it's about the journey, and it's about, like, what are my children learning and who are they becoming through the mess. Yeah. So
that's good.
Yeah.
I like how we can be messes together, Kyle.
Yeah. Messy's good.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Dads, thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Upshot. Wherever you are, Kyle and I hope you got something out of it. Know that you're not alone in this journey called fatherhood. And we want to encourage you to hit that like button, subscribe button, or whatever button is in front of you with the technology you're using. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on The Upshot.